Yes, YouTube, what's popping? I'm back with another video today. Sorry, I didn't upload one yesterday. I'm gonna try and do them daily. Yesterday I was just had a long day at work, and when you finish work and you've got childcare to maintain and look after, and yeah, I was just too tired and exhausted to drop a video for you guys. My apologies, but moving forward, I am gonna try and upload a video for you guys every day. On just topics about weed, and hopefully it resonates with somebody and hits them in a way where they see the bigger picture on things. So my first point I want to talk about today is, obviously the title is weed versus real happiness. Yeah, and the first topic I want to speak about is temporary feeling of pleasure. So by that I mean, when you smoke that first spliff of the day, or after a couple of hours, or after a day's graft at work, your mind and your body's, it loves it. You get a nice sense of feeling of it, just starts at your head and goes all the way down to your body, and you're just chilled and relaxed, and wherever you went through that day, it just takes it away. Don't get me wrong, I used to love that feeling of smoking one after a while, and hits you differently. You know what I'm saying, guys? Yeah, obviously it's a fake feeling of pleasure, false dopamine that you're feeding yourself, and you know it's not good, to be fair, because it trains your brain in a way where that's what you need and that's what you want. Obviously that's a drug in itself, it's an addiction. That's the feeling, gives your body. Like I said, it's false dopamine. So yeah, like, I just want to say, it's not good for you in the long run. And the second point is relaxation. So going back to the first point, when you do smoke a spliff, any time of the day, to be honest, your body does feel relaxed, and whatever you're going through, whatever you're thinking, it just clouds your brain and relaxes your body and your mind to a point where you feel chilled. You can just lay back now, watch telly, eat some munchies, and it just takes it away. It's false, guys. You know what I'm saying? It's not reality. you know Real relaxation is, you know finish work, coming home, chilling on your bed, chilling on your sofa, chilling in the garden, with watching good telly, or a glass of water or a cup of tea, however you want to relax. But finishing work or whatever else and smoking a spliff, that's giving your brain false dopamine, and it's tricking your body into thinking that's really what you need, when it's not what you need. In the long run, it's just affecting your mind and your body, because you're smoking it, and then you're happy to just sit in one place, or just sit in your room for hours, and life just passes by when you're in that phase. You know what I mean? Also, no matter what you're going through, it clouds your brain when you smoke one. Makes you think about other things other than things that you need to do. Makes you escape this reality, this world that we're all living in. Clouds your brain, clouds your feelings. You push feelings back to the back of your mind, until the weed wears off, and then you start thinking about that stuff again, and then you smoke another one to try and distract yourself, and it's just a vicious circle. You know what I mean, guys? Yeah, man, it's just not good for you. Like I said, it's just training your brain and your mind and your body to thinking you always need a spliff for a getaway. Take your mind away from this place. Don't get me wrong, we've all go through things and stuff in life, but it's better to deal with it head on, instead of always pushing it back and pushing it back, smoking one, forgetting about it and pushing it back, because that's not your real feelings. You know what I'm saying? And then later on in life, when, say, you're not smoking, you're going to remember that, and emotions and feelings will hit you again, but you haven't got a spliff to smoke and forget about it. So yeah, it's not good for you in the long run, guys. It's not good. Yeah, man. So we've all been there, though. Hence you watching this, because you're a weed smoker, or you're trying to quit weed. It's It's false dopamine, false feeling, false happiness, false everything. That's how I can say it, you know. But yeah, the next point is that I want to talk about is real happiness. And by real happiness, I mean, you know, you got a deeper, long lasting sense of peace, happiness, you know, whatever you achieve in life or whatever emotion you're going through, you'll get over it quicker in a sober mind, you know, instead of filling your mind with obviously weed, which clouds your brain and clouds your feelings and your emotions, you know. Makes you feel good in a moment, don't get me wrong, you know, if you're having a stressful day or a depressing day, you know, but weed's only prolonging it, you know, especially when, if you're an overthinker like how I was, you know, I'd go through certain situations or certain things in life, and you know, like I said, I'll smoke one, and when it's wearing off, that thought would come back to my head, and I'd smoke another one to try and distract myself and get away from it. But like I said, it's false. It's not good for you, especially not in the long run. It's better for you to, you know, be a sober mind and live through them emotions and them thoughts, and not use a drug to make you forget about it. The second point is purpose. You know, real happiness comes from when you've got a purpose in life. You know, when you want to achieve something or you're achieving it, you know, that makes you real happy. You know, like I said, you're feeling the real emotion of what you're going through, you know, especially the purpose of fulfilling something. You know, you shouldn't, you know, go through a long day of achieving things and then sitting back and then smoking a spliff, feeling lazy again and taking your brain away from what you've achieved, you know. Rinsing money also, you know, that's not life, man. It's like I said, weeds it gives you a fake sense of reality, you know, and it's better to face things head on. You know, you get fulfillment from your relationships down to your friends, your mates, your cousins, you know, your family members, your partner, you know. Yeah, you just get, everything's just better living in the moment instead of having a clouded mind or, you know, not sober minded, because that was, like I said, that was like me for like the past 15 years of my life. I was, you know, living in a fancy world, or as you know, people call it. Yeah, I just feel more in tune with my relationships. Like I said, if that's down to my missus or my family or my friends, you know, my mind's not just taken away from reality by weed, and you know, with a clouded mind and a unsober mind. Like I said, it's better to go through things with a sober mind on your head. You know, you make better decisions, you do better things. You know, it helps you with everyday life of having a sober mind. And you know, I'm living proof of that, because since I've quit weed, you know, I'm more tuned into life, and I'm seeing things for what they really are, and going through emotions that, you know, you should be going through, instead of putting it off or thinking of it with a unsober mind. You know what I'm saying, guys? Another one is what real happiness is, you know, your health. You're thinking of, you know, health, eating better, sleeping better, drinking better, and you know, in the long run, that just makes you naturally happier and healthy at the same time. You get me, guys? So you know, there's loads of positives that come from weed itself. I mean, from quitting weed itself. You know, but like I said, when you're in the bubble, you don't think of these things, or if you do, you know, weed's just always there in the back of your mind, like, oh, you know, weed, spending all my money on this, it's not making me any healthier. You know, don't get me wrong, in life we've all got things that, you know, we want to use as an escapism, but you know, I personally, I think it's better to go through things with, you know, a sober mind, not you know, clouded, or yeah, just yeah, it's better to face it head on, man. And once you're out of the bubble of smoking, and you'll realize it yourself, you know, real emotions, and it's just, yeah, you can't, I can't describe it, you know, because it's just better being sober, You know, because like I said, I used to always think about, I wonder where I could have been with a sober mind, or I wonder what decisions or what feelings I would have gone through if I had a sober mind, not high all the time. You know what I'm saying, guys? And I know a lot of you can relate to that. You know, another one's personal growth, if that's down to putting weight on, going to the gym, education, achieving things. You know, you got a strong sense of purpose, and that also gives you confidence in itself to know you're not, you know, achieving these things and then running back to weed just to take the happiness and feeling away from you, because you know, weed will just make you put you back, weed will put you back in a limp mode. And you know, yeah, you've achieved these things, but it don't seem as good to you because the weed will just put you back in a limp mode. And you know, life's more important than that. But like I said, when you're in the bubble, you won't see it until you're out of the bubble, and you know, you start achieving things and going through certain things. You'll know that weed was holding you back in every aspect of your life. Don't get me wrong, a lot of people can achieve many things and do many things while high, but a person like me, I couldn't. It was limited. You know, I did achieve a lot of things, but I could have achieved more. I could have had more money also. You know, my health could have been better. I could have traveled the world more, you know. Like I said, buy many things instead of always just spending my money on weed. Don't get me wrong, not everyone probably smokes as much as I did. Some people do. But, you know, I would have been better off if I'd quitted it a long time ago. And that's a fact. Yeah, and just everyday experiences you go through. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you just a sober mind, you just make better decisions and do better things, and it's better for you in the long run than, you know, having a clouded mind, unsobered mind. That's all I can tell you guys. And you'll experience all of these things when, you know, when you do quit and call it a day. You know, your life will only improve, and that will obviously be day by day when, you know, you start getting back to yourself, who you was originally. You know, because over time weed does change your brain and the way you think, the way you eat, the way you sleep, the way you spend your money. You know, because weed becomes your life, and that's just like I said, that's just like any drug. So you know, but you know, I'm just here to give you guys real knowledge, and you know, speak the truth and speak from my experiences. Don't get me wrong, not everyone can relate, and not everyone will be going through things that I went through, you know. But if you do, hopefully this message can, you know, resonate with you, hit you in a way where, you know, you think maybe this guy is right, maybe, you know, I should try quitting it for a month, you know, see how far I get and see what changes in my life. Yeah, so like I said, guys, I'm just here to give you the truth, and some people might not like it, because when I was smoking weed every day, you know, I didn't want to hear the truth. Sometimes when I see videos like this, you know, I wouldn't want to watch it, or I would think, oh yeah, he's just chatting. But honestly, guys, when you know, when you're ready, when your body, when your mind's ready to quit it, there's a big change in your life in many ways. So yeah. But yeah, like I said, guys, I'm gonna try and upload a video every day for you guys, just on different topics. You know, hopefully it can help somebody and touch them, because you know, I am a spiritual person also. I knew that from when I was a kid. You know, certain things that I went through, and like I said, I never used to. When you smoke weed, you don't dream, but sometimes I used to have like visits from like family members and stuff. You know, so I know, yeah, quitting weed was a positive for me. It was a real good thing, because it was holding me back mentally, physically and spiritually, you know. So yeah, guys, thanks for tuning in and, you know, watching my video. Show me some love, you know, if you appreciate this video, guys. Thank you. I hope you have a good day and be blessed. Peace.